What about all things crypto? Give us the update there.
Yeah, so we have seen that crypto has been, I'm going to pull up the chart for crypto here. So we've seen that Bitcoin had gone this week down briefly below the $100,000 level. And we spoke to 10X Research. This is a Singapore-based firm, which had predicted back in October that you would see Bitcoin prices going down to the $100,000 level. And their main researcher is saying that Bitcoin, because of the big move that we saw, the deleveraging that we saw on October 10th, the whales that have been selling really since the summertime and over the last month, you've seen these long-term holders that have been selling their Bitcoin. That has taken out important levels when it comes to Bitcoin. So what this firm is predicting is that you could see Bitcoin going even lower in the near term. So we may not have seen a bottom. That's according to this firm, saying that if you break below the 93,000 level, you're going to hit an air pocket after that, and then you could go into the 70s even. Now, there are catalysts that could drive Bitcoin higher. That would include the Fed cutting in December, regime change at the Fed if we get some notice as to who would be the next Fed chair, and of course the government reopening. That has also been sort of a headwind according to some strategists for crypto.
Bitcoin heading for a decline of 9% this week, its worst week since March. And Inez, you've been following the crypto space very closely here. What's behind this drop, and what are strategists saying could come ahead?
Yeah, Ali, I just got off the phone with the head of 10X Research. This is a research firm that's based out in Singapore, and they've made some pretty accurate calls over the last month, starting in the summertime, really. But basically, look, you've had these OGs, these long-term holders of Bitcoin that have been selling since the summertime, really, and you've seen sort of an acceleration of that selling over the last month or so. So that has weighed on the markets. You had the October 10th liquidation, which took out some very important technical levels. Some smaller investors were also liquidated there. And so what this firm is saying is that their base case is that the Bitcoin industry is now in a bear market, but they do not see this bear market lasting like in the one in 21. I mean, technically, it isn't a bear market because it's off 20% off its all-time high, which was reached about a month ago. But what they're saying is that if you break the 93,000 level, then you could see an air pocket and you could go further down. They're predicting perhaps into the 70s. You know, at that point also keep in mind that fund managers that have been buying ETFs, and they may also be forced to sell as well, because why would you hold a long position or a substantial position in these Bitcoin ETFs if it's falling? So there are some risks in the near term. What could turn things around? I mean, there are catalysts that could turn things around. The Fed could decide to cut in December. You could have more of a regime change at the Fed going into next year. You could see the government reopen. So there are catalysts that could turn things around. But right now, we are seeing quite a bit of pressure in the crypto market in general.
Bitcoin off of some of the lows that we saw, trading above $100,000 a coin, but still significantly off the record highs, down around 20%. Now, analysts have been pointing to something called whale selling as a catalyst for this slowdown. What is whale selling, and how is that contributing to the pullback that we're seeing in Bitcoin?
Yeah, this is long-term holders that hold a large amount of Bitcoin, and we've seen that there's been whale selling, which has put pressure on the market. The strategists are pointing to 400,000 Bitcoin that have been sold by long-term holders over the past month. That's according to 10X Research. You also have Compass Point, which pointed out that net sales from long-term holders has exceeded 1 million Bitcoin since June June 30th. So that's a significant amount of Bitcoin to be selling into the market, but especially over the last month when we've seen so much volatility. The question is whether or not the market has capitulated or whether or not we could see a leg lower before going higher, because the strategists are still pointing to a bull market for Bitcoin, but some of the moves that the market has seen, that investors have seen over the last several sessions, have certainly been concerning, given that this is supposed to be a seasonally strong month for Bitcoin, and October was supposed to be a strong month. This was the first time that last October, this past month, was the first time that Bitcoin did not perform well since 2018. And in 2018, when it went down in October, it then subsequently went down about 37% in November. So certainly the fact that it did not do well last month does not bode so well for this month.
And I want to dig into that question, Inez, whether or not we've seen full capitulation, whether or not we could go lower, because it feels like we do have a lot of risks in the background from the shutdown and then more hawkish commentary from the Fed as well.
Yeah, that's right. So look, FundStrat's Sean Farrell was questioning just a couple of days ago whether or not you could see a bit of a leg lower before going higher. Compass Point is saying that they're thinking that 95,000 would be, or just above 95,000 would be the support, with Compass Point's Ed Engel basically saying that he doesn't really see any near-term catalysts yet. But there are catalysts which could send Bitcoin to the upside, and that would be the tailwind of liquidity. We've talked about this before. Liquidity is very important to Bitcoin, and the fact that the Treasury General Account has been sort of not been drawn on because of the government shutdown, that has not boded well for liquidity and Bitcoin. So if the government reopens soon, then that would be supposedly a tailwind for Bitcoin. If strategy were to go into the S&P 500, then perhaps that would also be a tailwind. Legislation in Congress that's also being looked at, that also would be a tailwind. So there are some catalysts that could send Bitcoin higher. The question is when those would come.
This crypto sell-off continues, and that heat map was very interesting. And it's not just Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin now is down 20% from the highs, and we're seeing selling really across the board.
Yeah, taking a look at the heat map, the entire cryptocurrency heat map is in the red this morning. We have Bitcoin falling this morning, down nearly 4%. Ethereum also down nearly 6%. And also Solana down nearly 9%. And this comes after what we've seen, this tremendous run-up, especially of Bitcoin year to date. The cryptocurrency is up about 9.5%. Investors really flocking to it during those key summer months when the market was hovering around record highs, as they were willing to take on a bit of risk here. And Ethereum had some of the best months that we saw in June through September. But now, as there's a bit of a fear, not just about this valuation, we also have the background of the government shutdown, the potential of the Fed not to cut interest rates yet again in December. And you could tell that now we're sort of moving away just ever so slightly from that risk-on environment that we were really seeing over the summer, with Bitcoin now moving closer to that 100,000 threshold when we were just above record highs of 120 last month, or September rather. And so it's been interesting to watch this sort of decline, especially over the last month, down about 15%.